Welcome back to Creative Excuses and to a mod showcase video for one of my mods, The Way of the Four Elements Monk Rework. This rework fixes a whole slew of problems with the Four Elements Monk subclass for Baldur's Gate 3, so let's jump into it and see what changes I've made. My first big honor run, I played as a Four Elements Monk and I had a blast, but the problem was, throughout the entire game I only really used Fangs of the Fire Snake, Stunning Strike, and Flurry of Blows. I don't know if you realize this, but that's just an open hand monk with more steps, because all I was really getting out of the setup was a little extra fire damage. I didn't use any of the other spells because they're just all worse versions of other class spells, and they don't really scale into the late game basically at all. They were completely outclassed by Fangs of the Fire Snake, and they were mostly a waste of key points after level 4 when you get Stunning Strike and extra attack. So this is where my rework comes in. I wanted to rework the class so that the spells felt good to use and that they were the actual main feature of the class instead of the extremely powerful base monk kit of Stunning Strikes and Flurry of Blows. So I made 3 big changes. First, I removed Flurry of Blows. What? But that's like the monk feature, right? I don't care. Flurry of Blows and Tavern Brawler specifically is such a ridiculously strong feature that if it's in the class, there is no reason to use key on pretty much anything else. So I got rid of it for 4 Elements Monk and replaced it with the 1 key costing cantrip spells. Instead of Flurry of Blows at level 3 of 4 Elements Monk, you can now cast the monk versions of Ray of Frost, Shocking Grasp, and the unique Fangs of the Fire Snake with a bonus action and a key point. At the very least, you'll likely be casting cantrip-like spells most turns, which feels so much more thematic than the offhand punches, or Flurry of Blows. All of this means that you are much more incentivized to spend your key points on spells rather than Flurry of Blows at the very least. You can still spend them on Stunning Strikes, of course. Second, I gave 4 Elements Monk 2 relatively unique features regarding melee weapon attacks by completely reworking the Harmony of Fire and Water spell. Instead of this class feature being a once per day out of combat action that restores half your key points, which is a ridiculously weak effect, I reworked the spell to be a key weapon infusion. Essentially, the spell allows you to channel your key into your weapon, much like a Pact of the Blade Warlock binds their weapon. This allows the 4 Elements Monk to make weapon attacks, not unarmed attacks, with Wisdom as their attacking stat. This works with any melee weapon and ranged weapons, unlike Shillelagh, which only works with a few weapon types and does not function at all on monks because of their unique Dexterous Attacks passive, which I actually had to remove in order to make this work. The benefit of this feature is that you can now build fully into Wisdom, which is going to beef up your spell saves significantly, which is obviously incredibly important considering almost all of your spells are damage spells. But that isn't all that I did while reworking this spell. The 4 Elements Monk is incredibly key hungry if you actually use your spells, and that was barely mitigated by this once per day Harmony of Fire and Water spell. In order to actually mitigate their hunger for key, I made a new passive called Nature's Plenty. Nature's Plenty is a passive that activates anytime you make a melee weapon attack. It doesn't activate on ranged or unarmed attacks, only melee weapon attacks, and it only activates when you actually deal damage. This does include out of combat, which is not really intended, but it's kind of fun. Go return things to their chaotic nature. When it activates, Nature's Plenty rolls a DC 17 nature check to see if you are attuned to nature as you attack. If you pass this check, you regenerate a key point. Simple as that. At level 5, you get nature expertise to make this check a little bit easier, and I think this is such a cool feature, especially in the early game when you have only a few key points. It creates a tension when you go in to attack with 0 key and an enemy about to take out a party member. If you pass the check, you get a key point back and can use a bonus action to take out that next enemy. If you don't, a party member might go down, and that's a really fun encounter to have. Okay, the final major change to the class is with spellcasting. Essentially, I have buffed the spells, but I did it in often odd ways. For instance, not all of the spells scale at the same level. Some scale earlier than others, and one in particular doesn't scale at all. Fangs of the Fire Snake stays the same damage throughout the entire leveling curve, except for a very minor martial arts bonus, but Chill of the Mountain, the Ray of Frost variant, scales to 2d12 at level 5, but then to 4d6 at level 11. Other spells like Sweeping Cinder Strike start out pretty standard, but at the end it's a 12d4 damage, giving the same max damage as a fireball with much higher average damage, and much higher average damage if you chose to use Elemental Adept. In many cases, I made the spells scale to more damage by changing their dice to be smaller but more numerous. This helps with average damage a good deal and helps with minimum damage a great deal. This helps those spells feel better and makes them benefit from the pretty thematic Elemental Adept feat, which I really appreciate, especially if you use the Rebalance mod, which allows you to add an ability score improvement to your Elemental Adept feat. One last change that isn't major but I think is quite fun is this. Flames of the Phoenix has seen a major upgrade. No longer is your crowning class feature in the late game a measly level 3 fireball. It is now a level 6 fireball, but it costs both an action, a bonus action, and 6 key points to cast. The costs are because you get to cast this so many times per day, and because it makes you an excellent nuke against packs of enemies. You are going to be able to get a lot of AoE damage out of this, especially if you go for the Elemental Adept Fire feat. I do have future plans to add in more spells, especially other element versions of Flames of the Phoenix, but for now, the spell list remains the same. And that's it. Those are the major changes. Having played through most of the game now with the class, I can say that it is very fun and the play pattern is quite entertaining. Usually, you open up a fight with a bunch of AoE damage and maybe a bonus action cantrip-like spell, and then you run in on subsequent turns to clean up the enemies with some melee attacks and hopefully regenerate your key points to keep the fight going. Alright, if you are interested in the mod, it is linked in the description and is available through the in-game mod manager. Drop a comment and a like if you think this sounds like a super fun monk subclass. Join my Discord to get notified when I post new mods, and I'll see you all in the next excuse.